Before we get into talking about the stuff that doesn't really matter, I want to take a moment to say rest in peace to Terrence Clarke. This was an incredibly tragic accident, and my thoughts are with the Clarke family. In this world, it's very uncommon to find something that people can unanimously agree on. The cancellation of the European Super League was a reminder of how rare it is for us to all be on the same page about something. However, in the NBA, most who watch the game have the same general complaints. The refereeing needs reform. Whether it's allowing offensive players to bait defenders into phantom foul calls, giving players a technical foul for the lightest of gestures, or seemingly taking hours to review a clear-as-day call, there's tons of issues with the way NBA games are being reffed. I want to first tackle the issue of the replays, as I think it's probably the easiest problem to solve of the ones I'm going to mention today. During any NBA game, there are 3 referees on the court at all times. The league needs to implement a 4th game official strictly to handle replays. Why do we waste time with the refs walking over to the table, getting the replay monitor set up with all the different angles, giving them the sponsored headphones to watch the replay, and then after an ungodly amount of time we have to listen to their explanation of what the right call is before we then finally get back to game action? There should be a designated 4th ref that sits courtside with all the monitors, with his job being strictly to review any questionable calls in an instant. 90% of the time, us watching at home can clearly see what the right call should be after the first or second angle is shown. More often than not, it shouldn't take any more than 90 seconds to review a lot of the calls that either get challenged by a coach or reviewed by a ref. If you're watching this video, I probably shouldn't have to explain to you how frustrating it is to sit around at the end of a close game while the refs huddle around a screen to determine whether or not the ball rubbed off of someone's finger or not as it traveled out of bounds. It absolutely destroys the flow and momentum of tight games, which not only ruins the viewing experience on its own, but also kills the rhythm of both teams trying to grind out a close win. I'm absolutely in favor of getting calls correct whenever we can. We have the technology, so let's do it. But it needs to be more streamlined so that we can all get to what we came here for: basketball. I'm all for wanting the right calls to be made, but refs aren't even getting these calls right 100% of the time when it goes to replay anyway. And that's not a slight towards the refs. It's incredibly difficult even in slow motion with 10 different angles to tell whether some plays are a block or a charge. So who cares? I would rather just rock with the call made on the floor, even if maybe it's wrong, if it means we don't have to spend 15 minutes watching it over and over again from every angle imaginable. If we can just have a 4th referee whose job it is to watch every replay immediately after it happens, we can cut out a vast majority of the time wasted with these replay reviews. For example, if ref number 2 calls a questionable shooting foul, and our new referee number 4 can determine using replay that the wrong call was made by the time that everyone lines up for free throws, then they should have the power to just overturn the call. Otherwise, unless a coach wants to use a challenge, let's just keep playing ball. And speaking of the coach's challenge, why do teams only get 1 per game regardless of the outcome of that challenge? I understand that it's still a new rule, so maybe the league will update it in time, but in my mind, if a team has the ability to have a call reviewed at all, they should not lose that ability once they're proven right. Teams should have an unlimited number of challenges until they're proven wrong, with a minimum of 1 attempt per half. And I know that a high number of reviews goes against what I said about a better viewing experience, but it doesn't have to be so bad if we get them done in an appropriate amount of time. This, by the way, includes getting rid of Steve Javie from the broadcast. Anyone who watched the bubble last year knows how goddamn annoying Steve Javie is. No matter what the call is, he's just gonna side with the refs. It's a waste of everyone's time, and it's just ref propaganda at this point. Now, the replays are one thing, but I want to turn to an issue that's been bothering me since the days of Paul Pierce's prime, but has gotten astronomically worse in the last 2 seasons. Offensive players initiating contact with their defender to try and force the referee into a situation where they have to call a foul. Now, we've seen the NBA make attempts to eliminate this from the game, most notably when they disallowed for the rip-through move to be called a shooting foul. This move was popularized by Kobe and KD in the late 2000s, where they would swipe their arms through the hands of a defender in order to quite literally draw up a foul on the opposing team. In addition, Shams tweeted out recently that the NBA is working towards new legislation that would get rid of rewarding players for unnatural shooting motions, such as jumping forward or sideways into a defender to force contact. Watching a player go out of their way to try to jump into a defender while they're shooting a jump shot has got to be, personally, the most frustrating thing that I see when I watch NBA games. It used to be just select players who were trying to do this, but now it's everyone. I don't care who your favorite players are, who your favorite team is. If that NBA player takes jump shots, he's probably done this before. It's hard to blame the players for some of these things, because at the end of the day, they should be doing whatever it takes to win games, but it's absolutely ruining the game of basketball. Think about how often nowadays we talk about how many free throws a player attempts per game. Why is that? It's because free throws are crucial to who wins a game. And I understand that not all fouls are created equal, some players do genuinely get fouled a lot, but intentionally drawing fouls has now become a skill in the NBA, and that's just not basketball in my opinion. And this is not the same as someone who's driving to the basket and decides to absorb the contact and take the hit rather than try to avoid it and make the layup. I'm strictly referring to jump shooters who go out of their way to make contact with the defender. Not only do I think the NBA needs to stop giving these shooters the benefit of the doubt, I think they need to call more offensive fouls when it's the shooter himself initiating the contact. A lot of this has to do with the Zaza Pachulia rule, which refers to allowing a jump shooter to have his landing space, but ultimately defenders need to be allowed to have their defending space as well. This reminds me a lot of the hitting the quarterback issue that the NFL has had in recent years. Of course, we want to protect jump shooters the same way we protect quarterbacks. We don't want to have a Kawhi Leonard situation where Zaza Pachulia stands under his leg and forces him to sprain his ankle, but eventually it gets to a point where guys aren't even allowed to play defense anymore. Look no further than Game 2 of the second round of the Eastern Conference playoffs last year. Goran Dragic goes straight up on a Chris Middleton game-winning attempt, and yet because Chris Middleton leans into Dragic and Dragic therefore enters his space, it was called a shooting foul. And when I say straight up, I mean Dragic is standing still with his arms up in the air. And then on the very next possession, Jimmy Butler goes up for a jump shot and Giannis simply places a hand on his hip. That was also called a shooting foul and it resulted in 2 free throws which ended the game. This is something that no fan wants to see, no team wants to see, and something that the league themselves shouldn't want to see either. Now, like I said, the NBA will likely implement a new rule this offseason that eliminates some of this, but there's not a single doubt in my mind that we're going to watch NBA games next year where players are doing the same sort of foul baiting and getting rewarded with it. I'm not sure that I have one clear-cut answer that can get rid of all of this, but I just want to see refs stop rewarding offensive players for initiating the contact and trying to draw a foul. Now, the last main issue that I have with referees is how quick-triggered they are when it comes to handing out technical fouls. I don't have any numbers in front of me to support it, but it feels like there's been a huge uptick this year in technical fouls handed out. Now, a lot of it is simply the NBA refs being forced to implement shitty rules, but I've seen countless examples of guys simply just saying something to the ref and the ref gives them a technical for it. For example, a lot of people were upset with Jason Tatum getting a technical foul a couple weeks back when he bounced the ball over his head. That one right there is a specific NBA rule where the refs are supposed to hand out a technical for it, but it's just a bad rule. Who cares if a guy bounces the ball above his head? There are a lot of rules like this in the NBA where guys aren't even allowed to express themselves in the heat of a moment. I understand if you curse at a ref or you try to intimidate him or something along those lines, then yeah, you deserve a tech there. But just guys expressing themselves during a basketball game, that type of stuff should be allowed. It makes the game more fun, if anything. I don't think you can find a single NBA fan in the entire world that would seriously tell you that they enjoy seeing the high number of technical fouls, especially for the reasons they're being given out. High levels of emotion and intensity are a big part of what make NBA games fun to begin with. A lot of people's favorite player is Russell Westbrook simply because of how hard he plays every single game and the emotion that he brings onto the court. Now, before I wrap up, I want to make it clear that this video is not meant to just shit on NBA refs. I actually think refs do an excellent job of implementing the NBA's rules. It's just that, like I said, some of them just suck. Ultimately, it's up to Adam Silver to decide if he values the viewing experience more than getting the right call. Things like taking 15 minutes to review a simple block charge, or giving Tatum a technical because he bounced the ball over his head, are not the sorts of things that make basketball better. Not for the viewer, not for the teams involved, not for anybody. The NBA is at its best when it's at its simplest, when guys are just out there playing basketball. Let me know if you agree, and thanks for watching.